This is Jacyvhony E. Alayon, a first-year Bachelor of Science in Biology student, and I am about to explain to you globalization. So what is globalization? Globalization is the process by which ideas, knowledge, information, goods, and services spread around the world. In business, the term is used in an economic context to describe integrated economies marked by free trade, free flow of capital among countries, and easy access to foreign resources, including labor markets, to maximize returns and benefit for the common good. So how globalization works? In a globalized economy, countries specialize in the products and services they have a competitive advantage in. This generally means what they can produce and provide most efficiently with the least amount of resources at a lower cost than competing nations. If all countries are specializing in what they do best, production should be more efficient worldwide, process should be lower, economic growth widespread, and all countries should benefit in theory. So after defining and explaining how globalization works, let us now move on to the common question, why is globalization important? So globalization changes the way nations, businesses, and people interact. Specifically, it changes the nature of economic activity among nations, expanding trade, opening global supply chains, and providing access to natural resources and labor markets. Changing the way trade and financial exchange and interaction occurs among nations also promotes the cultural exchange of ideas. It removes the barriers set by geographic constraints, political boundaries, and political economies. So there are three types of globalization: the economic globalization, the political globalization, and the cultural globalization. So first, let us tackle about the economic globalization. So economic globalization, here, the focus is on the integration of international financial markets and the coordination of financial exchange. Free trade agreements such as the North American Free Trade Agreement and the Trans-Pacific Partnership are examples of economic globalization. Multinational corporations which operate in 2 or more countries play a large role in economic globalization. Next type of globalization is the political globalization. Political globalization. This type covers the national policies that bring countries together politically, economically, and culturally. Organizations such as NATO and UN are part of the political globalization effort. The last type of globalization is the cultural globalization. So this aspect of globalization focuses in a large part of the technological and societal factors that are causing cultures to converge. This include increased ease of communication, the pervasiveness of social media, and access to faster and better communication. So let us focus on the third type of globalization, which is the cultural globalization. Together with economic and financial globalization, there is also cultural globalization. Cultural globalization refers to the transmission of ideas, meanings, and values around the world in such a way as to extend and intensify social relations. Indeed, the multiplication of economic and financial exchanges has been followed by an increase in human exchanges such as migration, expatriation, or travel. Let us move on to the pros or the advantages of cultural globalization. First is the standardization of time and space. So cultural globalization has allowed for uniformity of standards in measuring time and space. For instance, historically different cultures had different calendars based on different determinants such as solar and lunar. Once, the very sense of time differed across cultures, but now we all follow the same time norms and calendar. This has allowed not just for ease of communication, but for greater scientific progress. Second is, cultural globalization is a catalyst for positive social change. Cultural globalization allows for a spread of positive political and social values such as democracy. This happens both through the use of mass communication as well as the physical movement of people across boundaries and the exchange between diasporas and their homeland. The third pros or advantage of the cultural globalization is the economic growth. Cultural globalization creates greater opportunities for wealth creation as it allows businesses and people to move and operate across different geographies with greater ease. For instance, the widespread use of the English language in American corporate culture in much of the world allows businesses to expand to virtually any geography without having to worry about linguistic and cultural barriers. So while having pros or advantages, cultural globalization also has its cons or the disadvantages, and first of which is the erosion of local cultures. Cultural globalization, while bringing people together, can also pose a threat to local cultures, languages, and traditions. For instance, the widespread use of English language is good for creating economic opportunities for people in the third world, but it also threatens their indigenous languages. So second disadvantage of cultural globalization is the widening of inequalities. Cultural globalization allows for greater opportunities for wealth creation, but it has been argued that it also makes some people wealthier and leaves others behind. For instance, while cultural globalization allows businesses to offer more opportunities to English speakers in the third world, such opportunities are limited only to those who can afford to invest in acquiring expensive English language skills. To conclude, globalization is a long-standing trend that is in the process of changing and possibly slowing. In a modern, post-pandemic world, individuals, businesses, and countries must consider both sides of globalization issue. Thank you very much and have a good day.